everybody, my name is Rose and welcome to today's video. So today we're making some Christmas outfits. So one of the outfits is going to be the Ophelia dress by Silversaga. So I was actually a pattern tester for this and I've already made, I think, three. This is going to be my fourth. I just really like everything about it. The puffy sleeves, the silhouette. I think it's going to be really nice for this plaid fabric. So this is like one of the little ruffles on the sleeve. I found this fabric while I was at the thrift store and I just fell in love with it. I try to think of like another dress, something I designed that would be perfect for this fabric for the holidays, but I just couldn't get this dress out of my mind after I found this fabric. I kind of had a feeling it would be perfect. And I also found this like little inspiration image where it's pretty much the same silhouette as this Ophelia in the plaid. So let's get to making this. Oh, and I've also cut with the remnants of this fabric a little dress for my daughter. So it's going to be really nice so we can match. So let's get to sewing. First up is to tackle this little ruffle on the sleeve. I'm just sewing the right sides together, trimming down the seam allowance, and then sewing the underarm portion together. I flip everything inside out, make sure everything is matching, and give this a really nice press. One feature I really like about this pattern is this open tuck dart, and that is the next part that I work on. This, I go through all the darts and just tie off all the loose ends on the top. I just double knotted and then trim away the remaining thread. So what do you guys do to finish your darts? I'm interested in hearing what you guys do. So since I don't have an overlock machine, I decided to clean finish all the seams inside. So this one is going to be a French seam. My next focus is on the sleeve, and what you need to do first is add this little like shirring detail on the half sleeve. So in order to do this, you need to mark it. So I end up using pins and I place them on the line. I go through both layers of the fabric, and then using where the pin is inserted in the fabric, I just mark that with chalk, and then this is my little sewing line. The marks are in. I just make sure that everything is matching at the underarm, just because when this is sewn together, you don't want like one seam a little bit higher than the other. You want the shirring lines just to meet up at the inseam. For this, you can either add elasticated thread on the bobbin, or you can just tighten the tension and create 2 or 3 lines of stitching to help the shirring. And that's what I ended up doing. I think this is more reliable than the elasticated thread. For the gathers on the sleeve and the bottom hem, I like using this little trick of the zigzag stitch and this thread. I go the zigzag stitch directly over it, and then you can just pull this yarn and everything gathers very easily. So this is something I learned from YouTube. I usually used to use like the long gathering stitches beforehand, but this option just feels super quick, and then you just remove this thread later. Sometimes I like to just pause and see how everything is laying before I do anything drastic, and everything looked good, so it's time to add the ruffle and the sleeve onto this opening of the sleeve, and everything gets layered. First this little piece, and then the sleeve, all the right sides together, and I'm gonna go through my machine after and hide all of these stitches using bias tape. Okay, so there's one thing that I also really love about this sewing pattern. There's a feature for these like little tuck darts. So instead of having the bust dart on the front come up to a point, this is not as easy, but they have, see, it's like an open dart. So you can see kind of more so on the back where the line comes up to here, but it doesn't merge into the center, like off to the fold at a point. It just is a nice little feature, something I've never done before. So this is like a really nice positive of working with someone else's sewing pattern. You just learn so much. So I'm currently at this part where I'm shirring the sleeve into the armhole, and yeah, shirring is like never too fun. However, to make it a little bit easier, I always use the method of using that zigzag stitch and then using, you can use like whatever you have, something like thin on this side. And you can use that to pull and create the gathers instead of doing the long basting stitches. It just makes the process so much quicker. And what I also really love about it is the threads don't break. So I always have that thing where sometimes if the fabric I'm using is a little on the heavier side, the fabric or the thread can break when you're pulling the shirring stitches. So this is just like a quicker, no hassle way of doing the shirring. So the next step that I'm working on is the pockets. So I still have to do all of the binding for the top portion, but that's a little time consuming and I'm just going to push through and get the whole skirt on. So I had enough fabric to cut the pockets. They may not match the plaid, however, that's like really actually not important. And I want to make sure that all of the insides are really beautiful and clean finished. So what I'm going to do is the sleeve seam here, I'm going to bind with the same fabric, so for both. And then you also have the neck. So this is not mandatory, it's not part of the pattern itself, but it's just like another step that I really like. I think it really elevates your whole your piece, the whole finished piece. And this is something I think I want to use for, you know, a couple of different Christmases. So the seams here are not mandatory at all, but I really love that the inside of the garment is just as beautiful as the outside. And this is going to really make sure that it's like a little leveled up. So you can also see back here, this is another one of the Ophelia dresses. This one I made while I was pregnant. So I had lifted the seam a bit higher so that it made room for my belly. I cut the same size. I found out that I'm not crazy about this white as a dress because it feels too wedding-y, and I actually kind of wish that I wore this for when we eloped. However, I made something separate and past the point. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the bottom and I'm going to create the top from it. This fabric is like a little shiny, so it looks really pretty up close as well. It was curtains that I upcycled. So this is like a piece that I'm gonna work on so that I can just wear it and not feel like I'm going to a wedding. Otherwise, it's really beautiful, like love this. So that's what I'm gonna do. I cut already the bias for the sleeves and then here as well. This is supposed to be bias on the pattern piece, but because it's not on a curve, you know, like an armhole or a neckline, it's on a straight piece. It can also be sewn with a straight seam. So that's what I did. Instead of cutting it on the bias, like I would do for the neckline or the armhole, this was just cut with a straight pattern piece on the straight grant line. I'm putting together the pockets, so putting that together, and then I'm also going to go in, I have some extra bias here. You're going to need the bias for the pockets. I'm going to do the pocket outline in this so that all the insides is beautiful. No raw edges are out. Yeah, let's get to it. So in order to save time with this process of adding these to the side seams, I'm just gonna go and sew. So you open the one part of this folded bias binding, and I'm just gonna start sewing that right into the fabric itself, so not doing a stitch beforehand. I'm working against a sleeping, napping baby, so this is my little hack.
Everything that I want to be as a mom.
Next up, I added those same zigzag stitching to all of the skirt portion and added it to the top so that everything is nice and quick. After this is done, you pull that thread, everything gets pulled into place perfectly. You can go off to your iron and give the shirring a nice steam before sewing. This really helps to relax the fabric. And then we have almost a finished piece. Okay, so we're back at sewing, and I have been working to make all of the inside of the garment really nice and neat. So I tied off all my darts, which are just nice and clean now. And I'm adding the same color bias binding to all of the inside seams. So the waist, the shoulder seams, obviously the neckline, that's required, and then the center back zipper part. And then we're moving on to our zipper. Only things I still have is the sleeve opening. I still have to add that to the other side, sew everything in, hem this, and we're on the final stretch. So I've never been someone who's afraid of zippers. However, I'm not afraid of them because I make sure to do a couple steps before everything is completely finalized. So what I'm going to do, setting my machine up for an invisible zipper, but I'm also going to set my machine stitch on the highest level, just so that if something happens, I can remove things easily. And when things look good and are finalized, I can make the stitch size smaller and make everything a little bit more permanent. Because a couple things need to align here. I'm aligning that seam on the center back, but then also all of the plaid lines, really important to match up. So a little tricky. So moving on to my daughter's matching dress, everything was pre-cut before this, and I did some serious bead sewing for you guys. So another project that you had to really pay attention to the lines. So I sewed this seam probably like 4 times before I found it perfect. I wanted all the stripes to be centered and straight, and I did the best I could. So the same thing happens on the front and back. There's just this little portion of a pattern. Then this is the sleeve. It's going to have like a ruffle, and I just folded back the seam of the hem and did some quick sewing here. For this, I decided to do the 2 rows of basting for the top, and it shirred really easily. This is a really thin cotton and it came together really well. Before I added it to the sleeve piecing, I decided to give this a really good steam, which made it look so nice, and I highly recommend you to do this as well if you're going to make this pattern. So next up is adding the sleeves to the top and back, and this is where I run into a problem because I realize my daughter's head is not going to fit in this neckline. Well now this is officially the part where I run into some problems. So everything was running really smoothly. I understood all the directions, and then I realized, well, my daughter's head is not gonna fit through this. So, okay, so I think I solved the problem. So you can see this is like the nice like interior. These are nice and clean finished. This is the front. So it would go like this. These are the cute sleeves like this, but this is the back. So like a mirror image, only a bit more narrow. And it's supposed to be like so, right? This is also supposed to be sewn. However, because the neck is so narrow, I'm going to add 2 snap closures here so it can snap, and then I'm going to continue sewing this portion. Last step is just adding the skirt on the bottom portion, and then we can call it a wrap. To finish up all the remaining details, I add the snaps, French seam the side seams, and add the bottom tier. And then we're all done. So in 3, 2, 1, here is the reveal. Hope you liked this one. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.